Last year, March 2023, I ran a 50-mile race, and I actually set the course record at that time at 7 hours and 11 minutes. So I was averaging 8:35-minute miles for 50 miles, 7 hours and 11 minutes. Since then, someone's actually broke the course record. Someone just broke it a couple of weeks ago. Though at the time, I was pretty proud. Maybe I need to get back out there, but that's besides the point. And I've been thinking about this because a couple years before that 50-mile race, I ran a half marathon, and I ran it at like a 7.5 minute mile pace, and after 13.1 miles, I was absolutely gassed. Like, I did not have anything else in the tank. But what I implemented between that half marathon and the 50-miler race a couple years ago, about 3 years apart, that's the secret to getting faster without being as exhausted. And this is something other people have talked about, but this has been like my direct focus over the past couple of years with running. And there's so many things out there that people advocate for. They say strength training, they say stretching, they say tempo workouts, they say hill repeats, and all of that might be true. I'm a big believer in that. But I ran a pretty damn fast 50 miler, and I think I know one of the core components to that. Sure, I was doing a lot of what people were saying, strength training, stretching, speed workouts. Well, not really for this race. I guess I didn't really do speed workouts for this race, but the thing I'm going to talk about is low aerobic or low heart rate zone or maffetone or easy run training. And I want to break this down for you because if you're wanting to be able to get faster without being as tired, yes, speed work is important. There's a missing element if you're just focusing on speed work. And I think you're potentially putting yourself at an increased risk of injury if you're only ever doing speed work or running with a higher heart rate. So let's talk about it. So one of the things I realized when I started doing research after that half marathon in January 2020 between the 50 miler March 2023, as I started doing more research, I started looking into heart rate training or zone training. There's a couple different ways it's said, base work, things like that, easy running. If you've heard those things, it's kind of all the same stuff. So what I started to look into was zone training and heart rate training. And what I realized is when you break your heart rate into zones, so zone 1 through zone 5, the zones are basically a certain percentage of what your max heart rate is. When you break that down, you should split up your training into heart rate zones. And this is something I really started to focus on and has worked for me. So, short explanation, zone 1, zone 2, very easy with oxygen aerobic work, low heart rate. Zone 3, most people say it's pretty much a dead man zone. There's no point in really being in zone 3. And then zone 4, zone 5 is faster work. Zone 4 is maybe like a progression run, things like that. And zone 5 might be repeats or intervals or things like that. And obviously that's going to come with a higher heart rate. Not as sustainable, aerobic, not as much oxygen available. So here's the secret. Is when you run in zone 1, zone 2, and you're going to have to figure out your own zone, so go look up how to calculate heart rate zones or do a test for it, or really just YouTube MAF method, MAF or maffetone method. When you run in zone 1, zone 2, this low aerobic stuff, you become more efficient over time. So here's a question for you. What is more efficient and what is easier on the body? Running 8-minute miles at 160 beats per minute or running 8-minute miles at 140 beats per minute? Well, the latter. So if you have a less of a heart rate or a slower heartbeat at the same pace, you're more efficient. It's not as exhausting. And so what I'll see people do when they get into running is they're really worried about pace, which I get it. You have a PR you want to hit or it's fun to run fast. I get it. I love running fast. The thing is if you're never training this low aerobic system, you don't build as good of a foundation to stack intensity on top of it. So the way my uncle explained it to me is we've probably all played with sand or been on a beach and you start to pile up some sand, and as you get towards the top, you keep piling it up, it's stacking up. When you put it on the top, it starts to slide down because there's not a wide enough base. But if you expand the base, you can stack more and more and more on top. So it's the same thing with heart rate training or zone training. The easy zone 1, zone 2 stuff builds a massive base or foundation. And then when you stack intensity on top of it, you're able to stack that fitness higher and better, and in my opinion, more like in a healthier manner, because you're having your easy days and you're not always pushing your body and pushing yourself, and so you're less likely to get injured. And so I'll look at people's runs and it'll always be at 160, 170 beats per minute. I just think, man, if you did some base work, figured out what your heart rate zones are, and train based off of that, it'd do wonders for you, help you avoid injuries, help you get fitter, faster without getting as exhausted. Forewarning, or just a caution, it will be painful at first, but it's worth it. And when I say painful, I mean more mentally and emotional. When I figured out that I needed to be running at about 140 beats per minute for my low aerobic base training, or heart rate zone 1, zone 2 training, I would run at like a 10-minute mile, and then my heart rate would cross over 145. And so what's encouraged with this kind of stuff is that you start walking. And so like when your heart rate crosses over into zone 3 or whatever, walk and let your heart rate come down and start running again. And so when I started implementing this stuff, I was running like 14, 15-minute miles, and I was like, is this even worth it? Like, this is so painful. And now, years later, I can run an 8-minute, 9-minute, 10-minute mile, depending on like the, elevation or uphill, downhill. And I do that at 140 beats per minute, which is amazing because over the last couple of years, I've become more efficient, and 9-minute mile runs are easy runs for me. My intervals or my speed workout are in the, sub 6s or 6:30s, depending on what I'm doing. And so this has been really essential for me, being able to set a course record at a 50-mile race, run a sub 3-hour marathon, or run 10 marathons in 10 days. This has been like the centerpiece or cornerstone for me being healthy as a runner. I've run into some adrenal fatigue, but that wasn't from pushing myself too much in the form of intensity or heart rate. It was volume. And so now I'm working on that aspect and getting into running again. I just started retraining again a couple weeks ago. I had to take some time off, but I didn't get physically injured. And so that's something that I think is worth mentioning is like when you do this low aerobic stuff, you can actually put a lot of volume in. And when you build that base and you stack intensity on it, you just feel so fit. It feels amazing. So go look at your heart rate zones. Google how to calculate my heart rate zones for running, or MAF, F as in family, method, and go figure out what your zones are. And if it's too painful to always do easy runs, that's what I did. I did it for like a year straight, never let my heart rate go above 140, or if it did, I'd start walking. You can still have your intensity days. Go for it. Just make sure you have your easy runs throughout the week. Your lower heart rate stuff, low aerobic, so that way you can get fitter faster and not be as tired. So if you like running content, getting into running, like running, just looking for the next thing, my name is Reese Jones for those of you who don't know me. I'm on a mission to help people get fitter, faster, avoid and work through their injuries, and stay in love with running or fall in love with running. I think running is human, and as I've talked to more people get into running and they just say they love it, and it gives them some sort of peace of mind, it's pretty common experience. So if you're looking for that, maybe you should consider getting into running or getting back into running. So hit that subscribe button if you like that content. If not, no worries. You're not going to offend me. Your time's valuable, so I appreciate it nonetheless, and hopefully you got some sort of value out of watching this video. So appreciate your time. I look forward to seeing you on the trails, on the roads, or maybe in the next video. Peace.